The saying that I've heard over and over again is that for every hour of planning, you save yourself 4 hours of work. Why not plan? As entrepreneurs, we think that if we're not chopping the tree, that nothing's happening in business, but the reality is that you have to sharpen that axe to get effective chops. So the planning is a very important part of being an entrepreneur.
Hi everyone, I am with Chris Daigle, a successful entrepreneur. Here you go, Chris.
Greetings.
So I'm going to ask Chris a couple of questions. He's very nice and generous with his time. So let's ask some questions with Chris. So
Sure.
Number one, Chris, what's your definition of wealth?
Usually if somebody were to ask me that, I would define wealth strictly in a financial environment. I mean, I get the whole saying that health is wealth and family and that sort of thing, but I look at those individually. So my definition of wealth would be a level of financial security that allowed for you to not necessarily have to take into account the amount of capital that you have available for the choice that you're trying to make. Maybe that makes sense.
Awesome. Hey, whatever makes sense. You know, there's never a right and a wrong answer with that, Chris. It's like whatever. It's like a painting.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different way of
Yes.
looking at it. Now, look, as a successful person, what is interesting to our viewers and our community is what are at least one thing that you do daily that sets you up for success, or your daily routine. Can you go over that?
Sure. I make sure that I carve out time where nobody can interrupt me. A lot of what I do, I'm the business development director for a company called Agora Financial. We did about $260 million last year, but we're part of a bigger division called Agora Publishing in the financial space that did $1.5 billion last year. So the moves that the business dealings that I work on are not necessarily transactional type things. They're more long play that might take a month, a quarter, a year before we actually see the results of those endeavors. So a lot of what I do is spent thinking, and I make sure that I block off time every morning for planning, because some things that I've learned. The saying that I've heard over and over again is that for every hour of planning, you save yourself 4 hours of work. Why not plan? As entrepreneurs, we think that if we're not chopping the tree, that nothing's happening in business, but the reality is that you have to sharpen that axe to get effective chops. So the planning is a very important part of being an entrepreneur. I know that entrepreneurs are like, let's just get in there and figure it out. That's an amateur's game. A mature business person will make sure that they are taking calculated moves, that there's intelligent design behind the actions that they're doing, and that they're thinking, what's the consequence of this action, you know, a year out from now. So a lot of what I do is planning.
Okay, so that's planning. What about your daily routine? Like, you wake up, do you have like a daily routine as far as what you eat?
Yes.
Sports, meditation, like just talk to Trevor, and that was interesting, like some of the stuff he's doing.
So I have a daily routine based on the Hal Elrod book called Morning Miracle. It's easy to find. Hal's got a lot of material out there. If you haven't seen it, that seems to be a very easy way for people to get into the success habit of having morning rituals. That morning ritual includes exercise, meditation. I practice transcendental meditation. It's super easy. If you haven't found a meditation protocol that works for you, TM is super easy. Some reading, whether it's business book, self-development book, whatever the case might be. I call them incantations, but verbal, like saying things aloud that are affirmations, I think what a lot of people call them. And come on, Hal, what's the last bit? Oh, some journaling. It's what's going on in your life.
How long do you do that, Chris, in the morning?
So ideally, you're spending about an hour, not including the exercise. So 5 minutes of journaling, 20 minutes of TM, which is a standard session in transcendental meditation. 5 to 10 minutes of the reading. And then the rest of it for me is exercise. I do something called Orange Theory now, which is a high intensity.
Yeah, cardio. Yeah, you run on a treadmill and then you do
rowing and floor exercise.
Right.
So I do that.
Strength and cardio alternation for an hour. you blow your heart and your cortisol
Yes.
running on that treadmill. I went to one or two of those.
So that's what I do right now.
Awesome. Do you do that like at what time in the morning to give people an idea of like, I wake up at this time, by the time I'm done doing my gym, and by the time I start working and planning?
So my gym I do after. So I have 2 young kids. I have a 6-month-old baby boy, a 2-year-old baby boy. So
Right.
they get up early. So in order for me to get my ritual done, as described or prescribed by Hal Elrod in his book, he says start waking up 5 minutes earlier, then another 5 minutes, because you have to get up and do this stuff before your regular routines, not rituals, such as, well, I need to make coffee, I need to make a shake, I need to whatever that. So I do all of those things before the kids get up, and then my exercise I do after the kids leave the house.
Awesome. Any particular feedback for people? Like, I mean, obviously you are planning and developing a lot for one of the biggest financial publishing company in the world. Any things that would help people, like in terms of planning? Is there like a one thing that is key when you guys plan, you have your launches and stuff like that?
One of the first, I also do some like consulting and mentorship for executives that are being developed.
Okay.
And one of the first things I tell them is you're thinking too small. Well, I want $1 billion. It's too small. Considering the scale of Agora Financial, $1 billion's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So usually one of the first things I do is I would suggest to an entrepreneur 10x whatever you're thinking. It's a corny number, whatever, you've seen it. But when you ask yourself, let's say you're making $100,000 a year, and you ask yourself, what do I have to do to make $1 million? Or shit, 10 million, right?
Right.
You start to ask yourself different questions, because to do what you're already doing, you can kind of put the brain on autopilot.
Right.
To achieve something that you haven't done before, you have to do things that you haven't done before, such as reach out to mentors who have been there and done it. And just start, like, I call it shower time. So, you know, when you're in the shower and you're just kind of like spacing out or whatever, I'm acting like I'm washing my hair, but you can see that there's not much to wash. That is the time when I don't just kind of randomly think. I think, how do I 10x what I'm doing? That little habit right there alone is something most of us bathe, I would imagine. Right. That you're going to have a few minutes in the shower where you can start to ask that question, and your subconscious will continue to come up with solutions even while your conscious mind is thinking about firefighting, whatever the problems are, the challenges that you're dealing with in your business. But if you're not spending time thinking about those big moves, you're never going to get there. You're going to accidentally back into it 20 years from now, maybe.
How do you help the people to watch us? Like, let's say someone who's watching us, someone makes $45,000 a year, and you say, okay, like you say, 10x everything, and now that person is going to go, how do I make $450,000? How do they break that down to something that is achievable? Like for someone who's making 45,000 and say, okay, how am I 10xing to 450? What am I supposed to do? How am I breaking down that? At least I think it's possible, even if you shoot for the moon and you land on the stars, right? Yeah. Any particular advice? Because, okay, 10x, everybody wants to 10x.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't think you can, if you don't believe that you have what it is, doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you need to keep studying or keep going to seminars or keep doing whatever it is. But making that kind of money, working for somebody else, is going to be tough unless you're a salesperson. Right. If you're not a salesperson, then that 10xing is probably going to come from your side hustle that turns into a real business. Right. So it's possible, but you have to know things that you don't know now and do things that you're not doing now. But Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. If you want to get to that point, there's other people who have done it and gone way beyond. I mean, there's an interview that was had today talking to somebody who didn't even graduate high school, making big bucks now. What's your excuse, right? Right.
That's amazing. Anything about team building? Do you work a lot with team? I was talking with Trevor as well on team building, and that was a super important component for him. And Agora is huge, so I don't think you're doing everything.
So here is what I would tell people. The shortcut is a business organizational model called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on a book written by a guy named Gino Wickman. The book is called Traction. Right. And EOS is a start to finish model on 8 specific areas of your business that allow you to have fun, be very clear on what you're doing, but also run your business by the numbers and have everybody in your organization clear on what their number is, so that there's no ambiguity on, am I being a positive contribution as a team member to the organization? Right. EOS, the book's called Traction. it'll change your business.
Is there any particular way when you select people? I talked about that. People selection, do you guys go with by instinct? Do you have a rigorous process, a step-by-step replicable process to choose people?
So there's a couple of tools, and again, to reference EOS, they recommend leveraging a tool called the Kolbe Index, K-O-L-B-E.
Right, I know Kolbe,
okay?
yeah.
If you're not aware what your own Kolbe score is, I think the test is maybe 30, 40 bucks.
Right.
It's very helpful. The DISC, D-I-S-C assessment is a free assessment that's online. Right. It'll give you, again, kind of like a personality inventory of
right.
what roles you might thrive in or not. So
do you do that for everybody? Like, is it a systematic thing? The DISC, the Kolbe Index, everybody does it in the organization before they get hired?
So what I do is I cast a wide net. So what I want to do is I want to have people self-select before there's a human interaction from our team, so that my team's not wasting their time on screening people that just aren't a good fit.
Right.
So part of my wide net is I'll send people someplace, they'll fill out the application. Next, one of those questions is, what's your Kolbe score? And if they don't have a Kolbe score, there's a little hyperlink that says, what is the Kolbe score? How do I take it? So I'm encouraging them to give us that information. Obviously, the more data that we get on the initial intake for a potential team hire, the easier it's going to be for my team to sift, sort, and interview and hire. So we look for people who made the commitment to complete the application, and it's not like an application that you'd normally see. It's much more of a there's intelligent design behind it.
Listen, Chris, you've shared like awesome nuggets, of wisdom today. Anything on the personal level, like you have kids, you have everything, like that is not business, like through your success in business, like at your stage of your life, is there anything that is, like stuff that didn't ring the bell when you were younger, but
yes.
that are super important to you now?
Yes. Quick anecdote. It's the story about the old bull and the young bull. And there's a purpose to this. So an old bull and a young bull are sitting on a hill. And down in the field below them, there's a field of cows. And the young bull says, hey, let's run down there and let's service one of those cows, right? And the old bull says, let's walk down and fuck them all. Now the difference between those two things is as a young entrepreneur, I wanted to go out there and start chopping the tree, as I mentioned earlier.
Right.
As a more mature entrepreneur, I recognize that if I plan before I execute, the results are going to be faster, easier, less surprises, bigger results. So do you want to be a young bull or an old bull? Me, I operate as an old bull, and I get results that for instance, was the last deal that I brokered was $150 million. The deal before that will be worth about $250 million to Agora over the next 3 years. So those don't happen by being the young bull and just running down there and trying to get stuff done. Those come from planning. And success doesn't always take time, but be patient. If you believe in your ability to be successful, then do something better, become that much better every single day.
That's awesome. What about a hard work versus smart work? Like, what's your take on that?
Both. A hustler isn't always somebody that's just doing smart work. They also might be a grinder. So there's this word that it's called a grustler. It's a combination of a grinder and a hustler. And to be an entrepreneur and to be a successful entrepreneur, especially if you haven't had some wins yet, it's extremely important that you, take what Gary Vaynerchuk says with a grain of salt about just grind nonstop.
Right.
Do that to get your momentum, but don't let that become a habit, because then you're doing hard work when you should be doing smart work.
Right. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for
man.
your time,
Thank
Chris.
you for the invite.
That was really awesome tidbits, nuggets. Hopefully everybody get something. The purpose of those is to get something, 1 or 2 tidbits that'll change your life. You take care, everybody.
Yeah, thanks guys.